Welcome to A Walk in the Park with Animal Friends. I'm Patricia and this is Sky. And today we've got Dr. Sam with us from Joii. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do at Joii?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Sam Webster and I am the Director of Clinical Operations at Joii Pet Care. What is Joii Pet Care? Well, we are a veterinary app making pet care more accessible and more affordable with just one click from the comfort of your own home. And what does that mean for Animal Friends customers? That means our completely free to download app contains 3 different ways that you can access expert advice for your pets. So we have free video consultations with our wonderful veterinary team, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have our symptom checker, which without even speaking to anyone, you can answer a few questions and find out how to help your pet. And we have our fantastic preventative health clinics with our nursing team who can help you with everything from behaviour, training to picking the right diet.
Fab. Thank you, Sam, and welcome to A Walk in the Park. So today I really want to talk around separation anxiety. So it's a word that we hear so much today, especially since the pandemic pet boom, very unusual circumstances of people bringing in new pets into the home. And it's a term that I just hear more and more. And I think it'd be great if we can talk around, what is separation anxiety and how is it defined? So let's start there. What is separation anxiety?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's exactly what it says on the tin there. It is the behaviour that your pet shows when they are stressed and anxious about being apart from you.
Okay.
So that's usually the pet owner or their main caregiver goes away and they're just not able to mentally and behaviourally deal with that change. Hello, Scott. So that there's a bit of a sliding scale of how that can look. And in the really severe cases where pets really can't cope being on their own, that can be quite damaging for their health and also for your home.
Yep.
So typical behaviours can include destroying the home in an attempt to get out and then come to find you. Sky's demonstrating how to do that now. That can be digging, chewing, destroying doors, even in really severe cases, chewing through walls, and your pets can really hurt themselves. They can be very vocal. You get reports of pets that are barking all day while their owner's at work. They can go to the toilet around the home in their stress, and they can basically just be very, very stressed out and not settle until you're home with them.
Okay, so how do you determine the difference between a dog that has separation anxiety and maybe just a dog that's bored?
Yes, so it's really important to keep our canine friends busy when you are out of the home. Yep. They have very active brains and they need to be kept busy. So boredom can look like separation anxiety, right? So a little bit of chewing of a toy or destruction maybe of the sofa when you've been out for longer than usual, you might think, they're worried. But yes, often if it is isolated events, so it's just happening every now and then, particularly if you are out of home for longer than you usually would be, that would be more on the boredom end of the scale. Where we'd really use a diagnosis of separation anxiety is where that's happening every time you leave, and that is almost getting worse over time.
Okay. So is it the same as, we see as stress in humans as an example, or what are those different things that will happen and how does it manifest itself in dogs over a period of time?
Yeah, very similar to stress, very much triggered by a specific event. In this case, that distance between who they think of as their safe person and themselves. So it not only manifests, and you don't only see these behaviours, destruction, chewing, digging, barking, toileting, but you also can see kind of behavioural changes in your pet even when you are with them. They become more clingy. They start to follow you around the house. They worry about you leaving. And actually, they'll start to pick up on cues that you're thinking about heading out of the door and may start to worry from that point, even if you're not necessarily intending to leave. So if you're picking up a jacket to move it around the house or you're moving your car keys, they might start to think that there's a problem there.
And I suppose it's looking at that difference between that excitement and then that anxiety. So as an example, if I pick my car keys up, Sky automatically thinks we're going to go on the best walk ever. So she'll start following me around and the same if I put my, dog walking coat or gilet on or whatever, she knows that she goes, oh, actually, that means fun for me. So I'm not going to leave mummy's side at this point. But they're all positive experiences for her. I'm sure, from an anxiety perspective, they'll be displaying different behaviour. So it wouldn't be that positive. Yeah, I want to be with you.
Yeah, it's not the excitement and the tail wagging and the, shall I go and grab my lead? Let's go. Come on, Mum, out the door. It's very much pacing, whining, stressed, ears pinned back, eyes quite wide, approach to life. They will often almost become like Velcro stuck to your leg and almost try to stop you from leaving at that point.
Okay. So we talk a lot about dogs already, just mostly because Sky is in here and I am a dog owner. But I've always wondered, do cats experience separation, or can they experience separation anxiety?
They definitely can. I think we expect them to be a little more aloof and independent, but particularly I think for indoor cats, or for those that are used to you being around the home a lot, when that changes and you do leave them, they can definitely suffer from separation anxiety as well. Yeah. Now, you can get a lot of the same symptoms, but you can also see kind of slightly different signs of stress with cats. So that might be struggles with using the litter tray. It might be being very vocal. It might be over grooming. They have a habit when they're stressed of licking to the point that all their hair comes out.
I always imagined it with cats, as you say, they're much more aloof. I always see that, or imagine that if you were gone past an allotted amount of time that they were expecting you, they might have just changed the locks while you were out, because they're like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. This is my house now. But they can suffer in the same way.
And don't get me wrong, there will be some of them that when you're not back on time for dinner, they've given up on you, they're moving on. But for some of them, they really do have that bond with their human, and they worry when they see change in the normal pattern of their lives.
Yeah. What are the ways then, if your dog or cat has been diagnosed with separation anxiety, what are some of the key things that are used to be able to treat those? And is it a quick process? Because I think, we live in a very fast world these days, and I think people expect results to be quick, and if they're not quick, they get a bit disheartened. But I'm assuming it's a fairly long process for something like this.
It is. You're exactly right, Patricia. It's not a quick fix, and it is actually something that you will have to manage potentially for the rest of your pet's life by putting in really strong processes and patterns in your daily routine that stop them feeling stress. It's a bit like having kids. You don't want to set an example one day and do the opposite the next. You don't give them chocolate for dinner one day and expect them to eat the broccoli. The next day, you have to keep on with this pattern to reinforce the behaviour that you want. How do you do that? That is going to be a slightly different answer for every single pet, but really it is going to be a team effort between the pet owner, your vet, and also a behaviourist.
Okay. So what are the kind of things that that team of people need in their toolbox? So there's always a huge debate over, do you medicate, do you not medicate? And I know every case is going to be different, but what are the ethics behind using medication for something like this?
Yeah, there are a whole range of medications that we use for all kinds of behavioural problems, and separation anxiety is definitely one where that element of the toolbox can be really useful. Often people have tried advice that they found online, or they've tried to manage the problem themselves. And by the time they get to seeking professional help, their pet is struggling quite a lot. And it might be that medication will help calm down that initial situation and allow them to start putting in the behavioural changes and patterns into their lives that will actually resolve the problem longer. Some pets will need behavioural support possibly just for a couple of weeks. Others may need medication for months or possibly years. Very much like ourselves, every single dog is different.
Yeah, different personalities, different breed, different contributing factors to what is causing that anxiety in the first place. Is there a specific age where this might happen, or can it come in at any point? I mean, is it coming in from puppy stage? Could a dog get it later in life, or a cat get it later in life?
Definitely. I think any life change can trigger, any big change in your life can trigger that kind of behavioural change and separation anxiety to start. Now, we do see it a lot in puppies and kittens that have maybe not had the best foundation in their training as they grow. Particularly during lockdown. Now, we as a nation acquired 3.2 million pets in the first year of lockdown. So that's a lot of pets that came into our homes expecting us to be there all the time. And then lockdown eased and we all went off to work. That's a big change for them. That is a massive change. So a lot of separation anxiety triggered off the back of that. For those pets that didn't, at later life, it can be a change in job, even a change of home, so that the environment they're being left in is different and they're not quite as certain of themselves. New family members, so children and babies coming into the home can shake things up and trigger these problems as well. Yeah.
So if it is an older pet that then starts to display these symptoms, can we bust a myth around, can an old dog learn new tricks or an old cat learn new tricks?
We definitely can. Old dogs and cats can definitely learn new tricks.
Great.
And that goes for us as well. So just because your pet is, 10 years old and a problem is there, that doesn't mean that both of you together can't fix that and learn a new way going forward.
And when you were saying earlier, it's really a combined team effort. My question is really around how sometimes is it down to how the owners are behaving or acting, or how they're encouraging certain behaviours? Does that all contribute to some of these situations?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's the old wives' tale that we start to look like our pets and they start to look like us. But that can go for behaviour as well. They are very sensitive souls and they can pick up on how we're feeling. And if we're feeding into their anxiety, that will make them worse. It becomes a vicious cycle. So it is really important for a pet owner to keep a cool head, to really know and what they intend to do with shaping their pet's behaviour going forward, and to try and make sure that they're not giving mixed signals as well to their pet as they train them.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall into some of those traps, right? I remember when Sky was a puppy, that she would be crying at night because she came from a really big litter, never really been on her own, and she'd be crying at night. And then I would wake up an hour later with my head in her basket where I'd been laying down next to her to comfort her. But that was just teaching her actually the only way to soothe was to be with somebody or near somebody. And that's definitely a rod that I've made for my own back now, because she likes to be near somebody to be able to go to sleep or relax. But there's a huge amount that we do thinking that we're doing the right things by our pets, but actually we're not. We're just creating some of those bad behaviours.
Yeah, of course. I think it's important to remember not to be too harsh on yourself, though. Just because you've made a mistake one day and you know that you've maybe fallen off the bandwagon of what you need to do, tomorrow is a fresh day. And as long as you're willing to come at that fresh and always stick with what your long-term goal is for you and your pet, you can make progress over time.
Lovely. Is there any particular breed of dog or cat that might suffer more with separation anxiety, do you think?
Great question. I think all breeds are quite likely to suffer with this. It's more about their training, their upbringing and the consistency in their life, and making sure that they have been taught from as early as possible that they can be nice and safe and happy and have a good life when you're not right by their side. We do tend to find that we talked earlier about boredom versus separation anxiety, and those breeds that are prone to boredom can get more destructive and struggle more if they're not engaged when they are alone. So thinking about kind of active working dogs, maybe
like
that are
border
in the
collies.
home. Border collies are a perfect breed. Labradors,
bull,
yeah, exactly. Any breed that is used to being quite active and working. So yeah, Labradors are another really common one. They're supposed to be out in the fields as traditionally they're gun dogs. So sat at home, they will get bored. Huskies, they've been very popular recently, and Malamutes, and they're working dogs. They need to keep their brains active. And you'll find that if you don't do that, over time, they will become more and more destructive.
So just as a little aside to that, so even if your dog's not showing any signs of separation anxiety, what are some of the key things that you can do at home to help relieve that boredom if you've got to go out and you know that, I mean, everybody needs to go out at some point, right? I think we need to debunk that myth. You cannot be with your dog or your cat 24/7. You know, people have got to work, or you've got to go to the shops or whatever it might be. You can't be with them 24/7. But what are those things that you can leave behind for them to make sure that they're, you know, happy and engaged while you're out?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to make sure that you're trying to keep those intervals that you are leaving them alone as consistent as you can. Pets will struggle if you're usually out the door for maybe 8 hours for work, and suddenly that becomes a much longer day. Making sure they've got access to the food and the water that they need is also good. And then it's all about boredom busters. And there are millions of things on the market that can be used to keep your pet active and sniffing and chewing in a really constructive way for them while you're out. So thinking about some examples, there are really amazing ranges of kind of puzzle toys where you can hide treats in there, and some of them have timers and some of them are kind of snuffle mats, and there's lots of different ones where they can get in there and they can hunt out the treat, and it's almost a little puzzle for them to keep them busy. You then get all the different toys that you can hide pastes in and things like that, so that in reality there's no reason to put a bowl of food down for your pet. That should be something that they're almost hunting out themselves in various constructive ways to keep themselves busy.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you say that, because actually local to us here is the Hawk Conservancy, and they do a lot of these games for the birds that they have there to make sure that they're as close to their environment as possible, where they would have to be looking for food or scavenging for food or trying to find it rather than just serving it up. So it is really about that enrichment and making them use and work their brains.
Yeah, in the way they were intended.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we talked about older dogs. Now, with puppies and kittens, is there anything that owners can do right up front to really instill some of those great behaviours and maybe stave off some of those, not just separation anxiety, but anxieties more in general? Because I think, you know, separation anxiety is a term that's bandied around a lot. I hear so much about it either on social media or in groups of friends, etc. But is there stuff that we can do as new owners to help stave that off?
Definitely. I think have it on your radar is the number one thing. Know that this is a problem. And like you say, it's one that we're hearing more and more about, I think, as people realise it's not just them, and they're talking more about separation anxiety. Get your puppy into puppy classes and make sure you do the really good basic foundation training. You need to learn how to be able to teach your puppy just even simple things like sit and stay, because once they know how they're going to learn from you and take those cues, you can use that to build up a kind of plan to separate from them. And that is the thing I would say, start small. So often we'll be at home with our puppy a lot to start with, and then suddenly we're off to work. Yeah. Now, if you can start with smaller intervals with a lot of positive reinforcement when you can come home and your puppy's been good, that might be 5 minutes stood outside the door, that might be half an hour popping to the shops, and then you build it up from there. Then they will gradually get used to the fact that you being away isn't a bad thing. They get a bit of time to themselves, and actually great things happen when you're home.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the key things. So Sky was a lockdown puppy.
Yeah.
And being actually able to separate yourself from the puppy at that point was difficult, right? Because we weren't able to really leave our homes. So I found myself standing the other side of a door just to be able to separate, to make sure that she got used to that time, although pretty sure she could still hear us at that point. But, you know, it was that effort to go and do that because, you know, when she was a puppy, we didn't have access to training. We couldn't go to those classes. So I think we ended up in, you know, a much wiser, and I'm part of one of those people, in that kind of perfect storm, right? That you couldn't have the puppy classes. There wasn't the socialization available that they would normally have. You didn't have those routines, and it was hard to separate yourself from them. I mean, we did a lot of training ourselves, and you know, a first-time dog owner, I had to use all the sources that I had available. You know, Joii had some great advice for me and working with her. But it was tough, right? So do you think we're seeing that elevation of cases because of that kind of perfect storm that we saw?
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, look at all the resources available to you. And I think we were almost so busy putting our head down and dealing with the emergencies we knew we had to deal with at that time that we didn't stop as a community to look up and think, hang on, what is this going to do to our pets in 6 months, a year's time? So those pet owners like yourself who were proactive and went out there and thought, hang on, I need to teach Sky how to be okay without me. They've thrived and their pets have thrived. Now, there are a lot of people who it didn't even occur to. So that is why we're seeing this problem at this point.
Yeah. And it was so hard because, as I said, there wasn't any training classes available. And even when we started to come out of lockdown, because there'd been that big boom in pets, you just couldn't get a space even afterwards. So it was a real struggle then trying to get into some formal training. Eventually we ended up in gun dog training, not because I would ever hunt with her, but just because they understood the breed, how to work them, how to stimulate their minds and really understand, what drives them. Because anyone going in to buy any pet, I can only encourage to research, right? Talk to people, go and meet people that have got that breed. Because, I've said before that having a German Shorthair Pointer is not for the faint-hearted. Luckily, I knew what I was getting into, but I can imagine an inexperienced owner come in going, goodness, that dog looks beautiful. I'm going to have one of those. Then to be left with, crikey, this is like a little velociraptor running around. How do you entertain? How do you engage them? How do you train them? My advice on that is if you are looking at going to purchase a pet, please do your research on that breed and make sure that you understand them, you understand what you're getting yourself into, the exercise requirements, the grooming requirements, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you point that out, Patricia. Actually, the PDSA produce a report on pet ownership every year in the UK. And in the last year, they've reported on what happened in the pandemic. Now, nearly 30% of pet owners, so that's nearly 1 in 3 pets coming home during the pandemic, were to brand new, never had a pet before homes. So there is a chance that there was quite a high likelihood that people didn't necessarily know always what they were getting into. In fact, 1 in 5 pet owners said that they'd done no research on the breed that they took home before they did. So obviously there's a few people out there that probably got a little bit of a shock when their puppy started bouncing off the walls. So yes, I think the great thing that has come out of the last few years is a completely different approach to how we can educate pet owners. So traditionally, you take your puppy home, you go for your first vaccine, and your vet would recommend the local puppy clinic for a training session. We now have those digitally. So either with ourselves at Joii, where we have our fantastic nurses providing training support, there's a host of classes out there with brilliant behaviourists who can now reach an audience of puppy owners and kitten owners across the whole country and help them settle in and understand how their pet's going to behave.
Yeah. And on the behaviourist subject, if you have a problem, because normally, from what I understand, people wait until they're literally tearing their hair out with a behavioural problem before they go and seek external help. How do you find the right person to help support you and your pet in their journey, right? Because the internet has got a sea of information and they're not always, they're not always fully qualified. There's a lot of people that have kind of come through and class themselves as behaviourists. How do you get through that minefield and find the right person?
A minefield just about covers it. So there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that if you Googled pet behaviourist in the UK would pop up on your feed. It is not a protected title, so anyone can come along and call themselves a behaviourist. What you are looking for are some very specific letters at the end of their name, and they are CCAB, which mean that behaviourist is a member of the Chartered Animal Behaviourist association, which will make sure that you're getting the right person who's had the right training, who's going to give you the right advice.
So as part of that, if they've got letters after their name, will they be on a website somewhere?
They will in fact be listed, yes.
Okay.
And there are 1 or 2 key websites which we can share the links with our audience to make sure they know where to look for the right advice.
Lovely. And from a telemedicine perspective, how can Joii potentially help from a behaviour perspective?
We are so easy to access, and our incredible team of vets and nurses are happy to talk about behaviour. Now, does that necessarily mean we're going to be able to fix your problem completely? No, but we are going to be able to assess the situation in your own home, which is critically important to solving behaviour problems. If your pet walks into the vet, they're not going to behave how they are at home when
I
you're
get
apart.
white coat syndrome, right?
Exactly. So we need to see the behaviour as it's happening. And what we can do is we can sit there with you and find the best route. Now, it may be that if your pet is just starting to display a few symptoms early on, that our nursing team can help you with some tips and tricks just to get those under control and nip them in the bud. And if not, we do actually work with a accredited behaviourist on the team, Natalie Light, who provides full behaviour assessments through our remote service. So you can do that again from the comfort of your own home. And she will work with our vet and nurse team and with your local vet as well, where medication might be needed, where, more understanding of a pet's medical history might get involved in their separation issues. And she will be able to produce a kind of holistic plan of how you can go forward with your pet.
Lovely. And are there, I don't know whether this is a myth or not, but can nutrition play a part into behaviour, or are there natural supplements that a dog or cat might need that they might be missing that could be contributing towards either separation anxiety or wider behaviour issues?
I think definitely is the answer to that. We don't really look at behaviour. We don't look at any element of medicine anymore, kind of as a standalone problem. We're really moving towards a way where we look at it as a holistic whole life solution. So definitely protein and carbohydrate levels in food can affect behaviour. There are diets on the market that have built-in calming supplements, not medications per se, but mainly herbal supplements that can help to take the edge off, a bit like a calmies for ourselves. And there are supplements as well that could go alongside a diet if your pet was quite happy on what they're eating. And I think you really have to look at the whole picture. It's the environment, it's the diet, it's the routine, and it's that human interaction as well. It's making sure that we almost don't train the pet, but we train the pair, the pet and the owner.
Absolutely. So it really is looking at that whole holistic view, right? Because as you said, you can't take one thing in isolation and then just look to fix that, because ultimately there could be a number of factors at play that are causing it.
Oh,
including the owners.
Unfortunately, often they are involved. And I think as long as you're willing to admit that maybe you need to make some changes as well, there are so many ways that we can help.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Sam. It's been a great topic. I know that there is a huge amount of interest around separation anxiety. And actually, I think probably after this episode goes out, we might get a whole host of questions coming in. So we might do a follow-up on this. But I really appreciate you coming in today. And thank you, everyone listening, for joining us today. And we will see you again soon for a walk in the park with animal friends.